The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Big Ben Haslar presiding. Your eyes for the Honorable Judge Haslar. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we are in the case of The People versus The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, a 1990 comedy following the exploits of rock and roll detective Ford Fairlane, played by Andrew Dice Clay, as he becomes embroiled in a mystery rife with murder, conspiracy, and sexy broads. Oh! For those of you unfamiliar with those court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, the R&B lawyer, you are appearing on behalf of the prosecution. You may present your opening statement.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, and I do mean ladies. Oh, today we are talking about the rude, crude, and full of attitude, a classic, dig the scare quotes on classic, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane. Forget about it. No, really, forget about it. This movie is nothing more than a shallow star vehicle for one of the shallowest stars of all time. Oh, the Dice Man, Andrew Dice Clay. I'm walking here. So, to talk about this movie, we gotta talk about the Dice Man. Oh, we gotta talk about the paper-thin plot that is stretched thinner than Catherine of Siena. Wait, no, that was more Dennis Miller. I mean, thinner than Karen Carpenter. Oh! And of course, this is a comedy, dig those scare quotes again, but the tone is bitter and mean and does not jive with what should be the appeal of this movie, the Dice Man. Oh, case dismissed.
No. It's going to be a
Thank you, Mr. Schlender.
episode.
I was just thinking that, Mr. Lou Perez, would you care to give your opening statement, preferably not in Gilbert Gottfried's voice?
Please do.
Your Honor, if I just need to make this known, I have no idea what impersonation the prosecutor was trying to do, and actually, I want to move for a mistrial on a number of points. Number one, forget about it. I'm walking here needs to be stricken from the record. Those are not catchphrases anywhere associated.
Yeah, I think you're ripping off Johnny Manicotti there, prosecutor. I think that's a fair point.
Working with the gifts God gave me.
This is
look. Travolta in there too.
There's a little bit of Travolta in there, which, as we all know, Andrew Dice Clay does a fantastic John Travolta. I believe that the prosecutor has his mind more in My Blue Heaven, which was a vehicle for Steve Martin to do Italian Face. But that's not the trial that we're here for. I want to move for a mistrial for another reason, Your Honor. So the fantastic film from 1990, Ford Fairlane, was not available on streaming services. Obviously, people are scared about this film. And I left it up to, I reached out to the court for them to get me a copy of the evidence. And wouldn't you know, 43 minutes into this hilarious time capsule of a movie, it got a little spotty, got a little skippy. Things didn't sync up. Now, I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, by any means, but it seems like the court has it out for this film right from Jump Street. So I just wanted to be on the record that I'm moving for a mistrial on that.
The motion for a mistrial is denied because we went to a lot of trouble to get this out of the vault at Mar-a-Lago. So we're going to have to proceed as...
It did resync eventually, right? It was like a couple of minutes of bad audio.
Yes, Your Honor. It did. I have no idea who was just speaking there. Please excuse me.
I do like to be
It
called Your
wasn't the
Honor,
honor.
even when I'm on the jury.
It wasn't the honor. Who was it? I need to.
That's a juror, a very obnoxious juror who there will be order in my courtroom, sir.
Okay, because I have to say that everybody associated with this trial is doing the worst Andrew Dice Clay impression.
Hey, this is actually my voice.
That is one of the most awful Andrew Dice Clay impressions that I have ever heard, and I'm frankly I'm disgusted by this. Look, I'm going to come out right out and say it. This is a amazing film, much in part because anyone who watches it today in the year 2020 will not believe that it was ever made. Nobody watching it today could ever. There's a fable element to it, a fantastical element to it. You can't believe that this kind of comedy was made, happened. It was presented to viewers. There are laughs. There's incredible overacting. In the 80s, we had Al Pacino playing Scarface, Tony Montana. Andrew Dice Clay takes his character, the Andrew Dice Clay character, Ford Fairlane, to levels that you have never seen. He drips off the screen. It's amazing to watch. It's incredible to watch. You actually, I actually had the, I wasn't able to watch it out in more than like 5-minute segments because it was so much to take. So I'm here saying that it is a fantastic, very entertaining film, in a large part because it's so out there, so over the top, so 1989 going into 90 in the 90s, that I couldn't believe that I was watching it today as a 40-year-old man. And I think that's worth something in America and in this court. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. Mr. Schlender, you may proceed with your first exhibit, preferably not in an imitation.
Okay, well, let me throw out 3 pages of notes here.
Good.
Come
All
on,
right.
Snapperhead.
Did you forget about it?
Okay, so I'd like to start with the elephant in the room, the reason this movie was made, and that's Andrew Dice Clay. The man was on top of his game in 1990, and a movie deal was inevitable. And I feel where this movie suffers and gets all the way to bad is that it stars Andrew Dice Clay and not Andrew Clay Silverstein, which is Dice Clay's real name. Silverstein clearly has the talent, physicality, and ability to be a comedic action hero in the vein of Mel Gibson and Danny Glover, a la Lethal Weapon. But the need to cram in the Dice Clay bits really hurts the movie. So we are treated to the lines of the stammering and numerous references to crude and unchristian intercourse that ultimately do not serve the action, plot, or comedy. I would say the funniest bit is that in this crazy world, people answer the phone to win a radio contest. And that Wayne Newton is punching people. All things that work without the Dice Man's tiresome shtick, right? The movie would have been better by either eschewing the Dice Man character or showing a more practical experience of what it would be like if Andrew Dice Clay was a real person in the real world as opposed to just being a stand-up, and that is to say he's a jerk.
Okay. Mr. Perez, do you think this is too much of a Dice Man vanity project?
Eschewing. You throw these words around. Come on.
He does do a much better impression than me. I'm nervous.
I have to say this. I don't think that I need much. I have much to defend. I mean, the prosecution just admitted that there is a funniest bit in this movie. It's
a relative term, but yes,
there is a funniest bit in this movie, which is hit pay dirt for pay dirt. I believe that was the line.
Hit pay dirt with K dirt.
Pay dirt with K dirt. Thank you very much, Your Honor, for correcting me on that. And we also the movie features the comedy stylings of kind of a different kind of a role for Mr. Wayne Newton, where when Mr. Wayne Newton is punching ladies, there is humor in that because it's just so otherworldly for Mr. Wayne Newton. And I think a lot of the comedy actually comes from the incredible time and place that the movie took place. I mean, let's look at some of the co-stars of this film. We have the comedy legend Gilbert Gottfried, rest in peace. And thank goodness, with Gilbert Gottfried only being no longer with us for we're not even a year into him no longer being with us. Thank goodness we have Ford Fairlane, so that the world could be reminded of what a brilliant comedian Gilbert Gottfried is.
Objection, Aladdin would do the same thing.
But you don't see him in Aladdin.
Yeah, but because you need to see Gilbert Gottfried, Your Honor.
You do need to see him.
But, excuse me, Your Honor. Aladdin, I fucked them. There we go.
Wow.
Yeah. So just keeping it with theme. Notice how that joke works so well. You could use it anytime, and thankfully he does use it. Andrew Dice Clay uses it quite often. I believe he uses it with Clint Eastwood. I fucked them, and so that's brilliant. That's how you know that a joke works, where you could use it anytime throughout the movie, and it doesn't even have to move the plot forward whatsoever. Let's look at some other co-stars in this movie. We have Priscilla Presley. We have rock and roll royalty there. She was married to the king, and isn't that amazing? Excuse me, guys. I just got a message from my wife telling me that I'm incredibly loud, which seems,
you can hear from outside the courtroom. That's impressive.
Yeah, which seems right on theme because it's a very loud movie. We have Priscilla Presley. I'm gonna lower my voice a little bit. We have Lauren Holly looking fantastic. Isn't that incredible? We have Morris Day of Morris Day and the Time. Amazing. We have Tone Loc, actually. Excuse me, please get that correct. He listens to this show. He's a long time. We have Vince Neil playing Bobby Black, Vince Neil of Motley Crue. And here's something that I think a lot of people neglect to point out. We have the incredible Ed O'Neill. We know him from Married with Children as playing Al Bundy, and later with Modern Family. Ed O'Neill plays a very funny character of a detective who at one point had a failed disco career and a song called Booty Time. And that's something that I think the prosecution doesn't want to bring up, because there are a lot of very funny characters here that were all brought together thanks to
let's throw that to the prosecution as a rebuttal.
All right. So when it comes to the supporting cast, I feel one of the ways they're underutilized is because Dice Man is the star. And he is such a repellent character by design, mind you. This is like Andrew Dice Clay is supposed to be a jerk who took great relish in his comedy act of having people like boo and storm out and stuff. So this is what he needs to do. So as the story unfolds, it's important that every character that's introduced is somehow a bigger jerk than him, that you just can't feel anything for these people, right? Like you have the kid. He's this trash mouth mini clone of Dice, and it's just like, oh, kid, what are you doing? Jazz seemingly has no self-respect. That's his secretary, and her frequent abuses at the hands of hired goons and Ford himself invokes sympathy, like no real sympathy. It's like a clown slipping on a banana, It's like, what are you doing? And then, of course, Wayne Newton is punching and chewing up the scenery in every bit of the movie he's in. And I haven't even gotten to Gilbert Gottfried yet. I mean, let's face it, Gilbert Gottfried, he's the voice. That's what he's there for. And he's an even bigger jerk than Andrew Dice Clay because, spoilers here for the movie, he wanted to get in on the seedy piracy ring. So every character we meet, while maybe having some interesting elements, is ultimately treaded down by Dice because they have to be more odious than him, because that's the only way to make him appealing, and it still doesn't land.
And I think that's the greatness of the film, is that they still cannot be as odious as the Ford Fairlane character. I think that's rather incredible when to give your audience the opportunity to root for the garbage characters. I think you're doing something interesting there. I think you're doing something.
Yeah, but we're never really given a clear reason to root for him. He's just a guy that can bag the girls for some reason, even though he's being completely repellent. We're told he's a great rock and roll detective. We don't actually see any of this demonstrated on the screen. Everything he does is more reminiscent of like a effective bail bondsman or like a bodyguard. You know, he beats up that weird stalker guy. We never see any elements that prove he's a good detective or a good guy that we should be rooting for. We never get to see the stakes of his character.
Well, I think that one of the reasons why is because there's so much hilarity around it. I mean, with jokes like In Excess paid their fee with a koala, Milli Vanilli paid in bicycle shorts and hair extensions. These are the kinds of jokes that are going to cloud the mind. I believe I had brain fog to a certain extent with these jokes, and I just have to I have to say, I mean, what a tour de force of quite a performance from Robert Englund, where he is playing where he plays the menace who is seemingly impossible to kill. Here you have someone coming off of an incredible performance of Nightmare on Elm Street, where he played Freddy Krueger, and he manages to be a character that is just as scary, perhaps even scarier than Freddy Krueger. I think.
Well, objection. He's coming off of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, which is not good, and he's not very good in it. But your point is taken. That Robert...
we will not slander Nightmare on Elm Street.
Four. 3's great.
Oh, 4.
2 isn't without merit.
Okay.
But I'm just saying he's coming off of 4. Okay, he's hardly in like the peak of his career, and the thing.
I would just say that what Ford Fairlane does as a film is it makes the audience member work. You have to work while you're
work
watching
to stay awake.
Yes, correct. which is something that a lot of American audiences are just not into that. They don't like foreign films. They don't like subtitles. They don't want to have to pretend like a joke lands when it doesn't land. They don't want to pretend that a character is better, drawn a lot better. They don't want to pretend that they could be spending their time doing any number of better things than trying to watch an hour and 41 minutes of Ford Fairlane while they're holding down a full-time job and 2 children under 2. You have to work for this film, and I think that's in a way I think that's commendable.
See, I take the opposite tact. I don't think the movie really expects much of us at all, except just to completely buy into that Fairlane's great. The movie expects us to be the blondes that go to bed with him. Well, I gotta say sorry. I know at least 2 members of this jury that are saving it for marriage.
Well, perhaps we should move on from this and proceed with your next exhibit, Prosecutor.
Okay, really, very good. I ended up bouncing around between so many of my points. All right. I want to talk about the tone of this movie because I think it relates to a lot of the character stuff that we've talked about. I do think a lot of this case ultimately rides and dies on, Andrew Dice Clay's performance here and whether that's believable, whether that worked or anything. But the actual tone of the movie is important. And for Dice to work as the main character, we're constantly told that he's competent and desirable, right? So maybe that's an element of the comedy, but we always see that he's incompetent and undesirable, and so all the characters that are around him, like I said before, they also have to have this similar level of nincompoopery about them, and it swerves because of this from like violence, like physical violence, emotional violence, to humor, to violent humor. It's kind of like in the way Hudson Hawk was jumping all over the place in the various tones, where in one scene you have like very cartoony action, like people like for example, we're left scratching our heads when Jazz is thrown out the window by the goons. Is that supposed to be funny? As she's walking away right after it, should people being shot have stakes, or is it just another gag? The movie doesn't walk that line very well, like a movie like Lethal Weapon, for example, where you have funny guys in serious situations. And this one, you have guys who crack jokes in a serious situation, and I don't think it meshes.
Just to comment on Jazz. Here we have a woman who was not treated well by Ford Fairlane. We all admit that. She was thrown out of a window by the two gentlemen in trench coats, but she comes back and she manages to beat up one of the men who wasn't killed, I believe. She beats him up, and then later at the end of the movie, Ford Fairlane falls in love. So it's you didn't know you were going to see a love story here. And
you could call it love. It's Stockholm syndrome.
You definitely didn't see the love story there. You had to work for it a little bit. Again, moviegoers, they don't want to work for it.
I wrote 2 pages of notes for this movie. I put in enough work.
But does the film need some like cinematic Adderall to sort of keep its focus?
I am not familiar with the drug Adderall, or if that's its street name.
Does it just need to like focus on instead of jumping around throwing different bits at the wall?
Look, no one is saying this movie is perfect. Okay, there's definitely some tweaking that I could have had in there. I personally would have liked to see Ford Fairlane kiss more women, because obviously the character is an amazing kisser, and you could tell by the way the women who he kisses act like he's an amazing kisser. Again, putting the work in, and making us believe that this Ford Fairlane, who constantly has a cigarette in his mouth, gives the most delicious kisses you could ever imagine. So there you go.
I'm sure Andrew Dice Clay worked on getting it to the script. Mr. Prosecutor, did you have any further exhibits?
So I guess just my last point would be when we look at the story here, how it's kind of like this, it's trying to be like a slick noir, even though, again, they want us to hate everyone. I mean, Wayne Newton has this speech at the end of the movie about how the music industry is corrupt and everyone's a phony and everyone's in it for the money. It's a very, very LA sentiment, I suppose. I've never been to the left coast though, so no plans on going anytime soon. That's not God's country out there. But
have you been invited?
Once. Funny story there. Anywho, the plot then falls around why this rock and roll singer died. Gilbert Gottfried's looking for someone. He ends up dying. It's a pretty standard noir kind of plot. The MacGuffin is in these 3 CDs that, when you put them together, detail how Wayne Newton is actually ripping off his own media empire with bootlegged CDs and records that he's selling in other places to cut the artists out of their proceeds. I mean, it's a very quaint thing for the 90s. I mean, piracy like on that kind of scale never really took off, and really until the internet, like you just unless like Herb Albert was ripping off A&M records and no one knew about it, so it was a kind of a fantastical plot that, again, you just don't have the stakes just aren't really there. It's tough to see why Ford Fairlane would get embroiled in it as much as he did. He happens to find one clue, that's like the extent of his detective work, and there's like he finds the Art Mooney clue, and then once he gets all the CDs put together, everyone else does all the work. So to get all the way there, though, you just have this very kind of mushy middle that has a kind of an interesting sequence with the rock and roll funeral and the car chase and the hearse, but then from there you're just kind of twiddling your thumbs waiting for the climax, the finale to happen. And when it finally does, it drags on very long. We get Freddy Krueger popping back in, and he does the whole mano y mano shtick with him.
Hello.
Yeah, it's just so long, and you're already checked out. You're like, look, you already solved the mystery. It's like we just don't care about anything else, and they just didn't do enough to show why I should care about what's happening to Fairlane. And ultimately, that's what's going to get this movie the guilty verdict, is you just don't care about what happens to Ford Fairlane. And I'll rest my case there, Your Honor.
Very well. The prosecution has rested its case. Mr. Perez, you may present your case or rebut that point if you would wish.
A few things I want to point out here. One, the prosecutor may have called it a fantastical film, but within fantastical is the word fantastic. So I want to make sure.
It was a fantastical premise, sir, not the film.
Still fantastic in there. You have to be very careful of the words that you use, especially when we're on trial here. I just want to point that out.
It can't be read back in the silly voice, though.
That is true. To the idea of Ford Fairlane not doing the detective work. We want to get a little meta here, because there are many points in this film where we do get a little meta, where the fourth wall is broken. There's a scene where Ford Fairlane and Jazz talk about a tryst that they had not too long ago, and Ford Fairlane apologizes for having Jazz clean the toilet in the bathtub, but to what he says, who did all the work in bed? So in a way, all of these characters are doing the work, because metaphorically speaking, Ford Fairlane has done all the work in bed. Whether you're satisfied or not, now that's another issue. But on the idea of breaking the fourth wall, it happens a few times here, where Ford Fairlane gives a beautiful woman at a club his number 555, something, to which he says, that's not a real number. That's the kind of number you give in movies, to which he says, what do you think this is? You see, so we know it's a movie. That's very interesting, isn't it? Did you guys know it was a movie?
I don't know. I don't know if Andrew
was this like Deadpool before Deadpool?
Did you guys know that Ford Fairlane was a movie when you were watching it? You see, there's a lot of hard work. You gotta.
There is a lot of work. Well, I think the reason we have the fourth wall breaking, and he uses it to kind of get some of his shtick in, is just because it's a very classic noir kind of thing. Is that narration where they're talking directly to you? I mean, it starts with him on the beach. He's like, 5 days ago, my world got turned upside down, baby. And I can't do the impression.
Again, I have no idea. I have no idea who he's doing there.
I know. I'll just stick to my Gilbert Godfrey for my closing statement.
Sounds good.
So
it's got to be better than that.
So Ford Fairlane also breaks the fourth wall, and he says he could have been a rock star if he wasn't banned from MTV. So here we have an artist that he's taking his real life, drama, and bringing it to the role, which is commendable. You guys knew this was a movie, right? Okay, great.
Not a documentary.
I figured it out.
not a documentary. And also, watching this movie again after probably 30 years of not watching it, it was so prescient. The commentary on record companies not paying their artists, a prelude to Napster, if you will. And that's something that you don't expect to come from this movie, but yet it's there. There's so much there. So, as someone earlier in the trial said, there's a little too much there, maybe more than it's needed. And I say, throw some more on it. Throw some more. What else do you got there? And that is a sign of a movie that is entertaining and not a terrible movie. It's a fantastic movie.
Okay. Would you like to rest on that, or did you have further exhibits?
I'm going to rest on a few things. Sambuca milkshake.
Oh, jeez.
Never.
Probably good.
You guys never thought that you would ever hear such a made-up drink, but yet there it is, Sambuca milkshake, and yeah, I'm gonna rest my case on that. Thank you.
Sambuca milkshake.
Thank you. Both sides have rested their cases. The attorneys will now present their closing arguments. Mr. Schlender, the floor is yours.
Oh no.
Thank you, Your Honor. No, I'm not actually going to do my impression. Don't worry. In 1990, no.
I'm going to leave the
Pretty
room
good.
right now.
It was better than your Fort Fairlane.
I've actually been practicing my Gilbert Gottfried for
That
an
was
unrelated
what he did
trial.
all day.
Yeah, so in 1990, the Dice Man had another release to his name, and it was called The Day the Laughter Died, a live double LP of a stand-up show. In it, he famously quipped, "This show's not about laughter, it's about comedy," which was apt because no one was laughing, but that masterclass in crowd work, offensive humor, maybe even anti-humor, was lightning in a bottle, and that is the Dice Man that we were interested in. Not this cartoon character that is high on his own supply. Ford Fairlane is not about laughter, but we can't really say it's about comedy now, can we? What we can say is what we see. A hollow, joyless movie with an unengaging plot and a missed opportunity for Andrew Silverstein to establish himself outside of the Dice Man's shadow. Thank you very much for listening to my closing. I thought it was pretty good.
Wow, that was not Gilbert Gottfried. I don't know what that was.
Oh, it sounded
you
more like
lost
Gilbert
it.
Gottfried than you do.
Your
I
Honor,
didn't try.
Your Honor, I did not know this was a seance and that we would be reaching out beyond the grave.
You may present your closing argument, sir.
It is.
Thank you, and I'm very happy that the prosecutor brought up the word hollow because it reminds me of a poem by the great T.S. Eliot called "The Hollow Men." It so begins: "We are the hollow men, we are the stuffed men, leaning together, headpiece filled with straw. Alas, our dried voices, when we whisper together, are quiet and meaningless as wind in dry grass or rat's feet over broken glass in our dry cellar."
Did you have
Ford
that memorized, or
Fairlane.
did you go Google it?
Your Honor, I hope no one in the court can see my laptop right now because I have some.
Your face is strangely illuminated.
Because I also have quite a few browsers open with things that are not related to the case. Snapperhead. But it's interesting. I think that here you have a hollow man in Ford Fairlane, and the movie, the plot, the noir pieces are trying to stuff him with meaning, and perhaps he doesn't get it. But in the end, he gets a girl. He solves the case, and he gets a child as well. It's a happy ending, and I think it's something that we will never see again. I will never watch this again. And I think that's something we all should be happy about. And I appreciate you, the court, allowing me to defend this work that is so brilliant, you have to pretend it's good.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, Mr. Rob Maynard, and Mr. Booty Time, Ryan Luis Rodriguez. You have all heard the facts concerning this case. It is now up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. Right this way. FYI, we've been having budget cuts, so we don't provide lunch breaks anymore, so have a Twinkie, Snapperheads.
Okay, what are we thinking, guys? Rob?
Well, Booty Time. I don't know if you're a fan of Andrew Dice Clay. I don't know if I'm a fan of him. But this was an interesting project they tried to stick him into. It was lightly touched on by the prosecution. I wish it had gone into more depth. But what's weird is the way everyone responds to Fairlane, right? Like, he is a brash jerk, and everyone seems to love it. Everyone calls him an asshole, but he has no end of friends, right? Like, he brings beautiful women home,
Kind of like you.
sometimes in the but I don't bring like blonde twins home all the time. If I did, I wouldn't be doing a show with you. I'd have plans. And like, you know, like girls slap him and then kiss him. Like he's in this world actually a debonair, suave ladies' man. And so it almost seems to me that the filmmakers don't understand that the character Dice Man is supposed to be obnoxious, repulsive, and nobody's supposed to like him. And that's the joke.
Yeah, it does sort of celebrate his jerkdom a bit much, where you're kind of like almost as the protagonist, as a viewer, you're on his side, you're not against him.
Yeah.
Oh, I was against him the second he showed up. I mean,
well,
when it starts off with "suck my dick, Tracy," I was like, really? That's where we're gonna go with this character? Okay, whatever.
Well, that's another. You don't know where Dice Man ends and Ford Fairlane begins.
They're the same character. They're the exact same character.
They're the exact same
He's
character.
not that deep.
and I think Ford Fairlane is a pre-existing character based on some short stories.
Yeah, some pulp novels and stuff.
Yeah, pulp novels. And so it's like, well, why didn't you just make Dice Man the detective or something? You know, why not just do that? And he is a pretty lousy detective. I want to say about some stuff I liked about this film. I agree. I liked all the supporting characters. Ed O'Neill was fantastic. I wish I got a lot more Gilbert, but when Gilbert was there, he was great. He's such a perfect shock jock. Wayne Newton as the big bad villain is great. It's pitch perfect.
And that twist was done later to better effect in Coco. The putting the microphone next to him and letting him unleash his evil plan is the exact same ending to Coco.
Oh.
Okay, I don't know if I saw Coco. So the skeleton one?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I didn't see that. Sorry.
It's the exact same ending.
Yeah, I should. They're skeletons, but I feel like they're not going to kill anyone.
Who did it first, Ryan?
Exactly.
This one did,
exactly.
I guess.
Did the makers of Coco see this movie?
I can guarantee you they didn't. I can guarantee that.
More positive stuff. I love the world building. I love that every time he answers the phone, he does the radio host line. I love the Sambuca milkshake. Those are weird, quirky little details that feel like Big Kahuna Burger out of Tarantino stuff. They like just like little world things that make the world feel lived in. Whereas the stuff that makes the world not feel lived in is again the way everyone responds to Dice Man. If he was just trying to solve a case and he was exactly the same way he was, but everyone was tired of him and kicking him out and just thinking he's obnoxious, I would be calling it a great movie.
Ooh.
Ben, any other ideas?
No, I definitely agree with you. I'm not familiar with Andrew Dice Clay. I have not seen his stand-up or anything before this. So going in blind to this.
This is the stand-up.
Yeah, I hate him. I don't like him. I have no desire to see anything else that he's doing. But I do agree with you. Everything else, if you just cut him out of the film and replaced him with literally anybody else, I would be so much more on board with this film than I was. He's the one that drags it down. Although he did have some good one-liners here and there that I guess raise him a bit in my mind. But
I think he's not like a bad actor. It's just that he's stuck doing this part. And I think think you're supposed to hate Andrew Dice Clay. That's the bit. That's the joke. He's
that's not present in this movie, though.
And that's not present in this movie. That's what I'm saying. Is that that's not there. And maybe I think the prosecution brought it up. Maybe by this point in his career, and he's had so much success, like he sold out MSG back to back, which I think he's the first maybe comedian to do it or performer. But he, he's hosted SNL. He's doing very well. Maybe he's starting to think, hey, maybe the Dice Man's not a bit. Maybe I am it, and he's starting to live it.
You never think you're the murderer.
Yeah, for sure. Ryan, some more thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think that if I want to see a good Rennie Harlan movie, I'll watch The Long Kiss Goodnight and then nothing else. Literally, one of the worst directors we have still working today. Somehow, I think he's working in China right now, but he's still working. This movie, I hated it from moment one, and that did not waver. No matter how many people you throw at my way, you throw at me Ed O'Neill, I'm going to go great. In a different movie, I'm okay with that. You throw Morris Day at me, but no time, that's not acceptable. This movie, I swear to God, 5 minutes in, I was like, oh, I'm going to hate the next hour and 40 minutes. And you know what? I was right. I despise this movie.
Another
self-fulfilling
another
prophecy.
world building thing I did like, though. I love that everyone in LA went there to be like in a band or an actor or something and couldn't make it, and they just start taking up the occupations the town needed, like detective and DJ and
Yeah.
a lieutenant in the police. So I think that's very funny. I guess I'll go on record first. I think there's things they could have made done to make this movie a lot better. I think that there's like a lack of understanding of who Dice Clay's character is really. But I still think there's some good performances, especially from some of the supporting people. I do like the kind of little world it builds in. I just wish that the world understood how ridiculous Dice Clay is. But still, I'm gonna go not guilty.
Ben?
Well, I kind of know which way you're going already, but yeah, I kind of agree with Rob. I think that it's not good, but it's north of bad. They could have fixed it. It could have been good. It never could have been great, but it could have been good. But it's not bad, so not guilty.
Guilty!
Right.
Why, Ryan? Why?
I think I've illustrated how much I hate this movie before.
It's true. Oh! All right, then let's get out there and tell that very handsome judge.
Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. Somehow, in the case of The People versus The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, we find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie.
Oh! What? How did this happen? What?
All right, the verdict is so rendered, but I'm putting it down now. There will be no impersonations of Andrew Dice Clay nor Gilbert Gottfried outside of my courthouse. It's been done. We get it. Court is adjourned.
That's perfect. I can't do one. This is Andrew Clay Silverstein, the performer known as Andrew Dice Clay. I'm actually a very sensitive soul. Just standing out here outside the courthouse here at the Reels of Justice. Gonna get a word here with these fine representatives. Mr. Dylan J. Schlender, could you share your thoughts on today's verdict?
The term miscarriage of justice is used very loosely today. And I'm going to use it loosely as well. This is a miscarriage of justice, but I will tip my hat to the opposing counsel. They brought some great arguments and made some funny points. And we all had a lot of fun here today, and I think we all really, really enjoyed my Dennis Miller joke in my opening statements. Go back and listen to it again in case you missed it. We'll be here waiting for you. Bye, everyone.
Touching. True words from a man's soul. Lou Perez, could you share your thoughts on how you feel about today's decision?
Well, as you can see, if you look down, Stanley right now is fully erect. But this being a courthouse, I want to show respect. Roseanne Barr naked, gone. There you go. My satisfactory erection is now flaccid. I don't know if justice was done today, but
It wasn't.
I don't know if justice was done today, but I'll tell you what. This might be the last time that I might quit law after this. I feel like I got a guilty person off, and
Oh!
yeah, I'm having mixed emotions right now. But you know what? When it comes to the reels of justice, I am ready to service any film from 1990 or below.
Oh, way below. Sorry, that's a force of habit over here. And just, Anyway, that's all the time we have for here. Let's get back to the studio for a post-trial analysis.
Oh, that was a fun one. Actually, I kind of liked the movie, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think they didn't get the character.
They
I
could have
think a
fixed it.
reprehensible, awful detective that everyone he runs into really hates, not just says they hates, really hates, has some legs. And I think that really hateable character who was popular would have been the perfect thing to drive that home.
You're absolutely right. If people go out there, listen to The Day the Laughter Died, you can listen to it for free on YouTube, and that's really Andrew Dice Clay, and it's borderline reprehensible. You might yell at your screen saying, "Why am I listening to this?" That would have been made for a much more interesting movie.
Hope
But
maybe Ryan will check it out.
That's the case. Oh, I'm going to just periodically send links to Ryan. And make him watch.
So Lou, great job, congratulations.
Well done.
Oh, thank you very much.
And what have you been up to lately? What's been keeping you busy?
So outside of watching this movie, can I just say something about this movie? It's pretty amazing that Andrew Dice Clay has the same exact delivery for every line, like throughout the movie. You know,
talent.
It's crazy because you wouldn't think of it as monotone, but it is kind of monotone. You know, just it's almost like while Christopher Walken's delivery is very, distinct, there's I just found myself like kind of stopping and starting the movie and just being like, oh man, I got like another hour of this. Like, oh man.
Now you know how I feel.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at when I was a kid, my my younger brothers used to, they're like 6 years old, 5, 6 years old. They used to do the nursery rhymes from Andrew Dice Clay. So Andrew Dice Clay had dirty nursery rhymes. That was his thing, and they used to. They used to repeat those, and it would make like all the adults laugh, because like here you have like these little kids saying very dirty stuff, with probably the most popular stand-up comedian at the time. So when I went back to look at this, I was like, oh, I remember like loving this movie as a kid. And it's just funny seeing just how much doesn't hold up. And I think the prosecution had some very good points about about the film.
You telling us to reverse the decision?
No
we go right back in there.
I got no problem with that whatsoever.
He was complimenting me. Shut up, guys. Please, Lou, continue with how great I am.
No. I think you really hit it, but I think it is like it's kind of a wild movie to just think of like all the elements of it, and all the people involved that came together to make that movie. Ed O'Neill, I think, like we said, is just fantastic in it. And I wish there was more Ed O'Neill. And I think there are a lot of ways to make the movie, better for sure. So.
Well, the decision is final. We're not
Thank you.
Yes. But besides that, so what have you been working on?
Yes, so I have a book coming out September 6th. It's called "That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore: On the Death and Rebirth of Comedy." There's no mention of Ford Fairlane in it, just so everybody knows.
Is there mentions of Andrew Dice Clay though?
I don't mention Clay. Yeah, I don't mention Andrew Dice Clay.
You have to save something for the sequel, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think you guys hit on it. I think it was during your the jury deliberation. There was a point where, Andrew Dice Clay is a character, and there was a point where he started playing the character in real life, and it's weird. It's definitely he's Andrew Dice Clay's had a very weird, career in comedy, and I think he's an important comedic figure too. That he, had a huge impact on the comedy world, like in the late '80s, early '90s, and was it the Day the Laughter Died? Is that
yeah? That's his second album. Yeah,
it's produced by Rick Rubin.
Yes, it is. Def Jam.
Yeah, so talk about like a ballsy performer who's willing to go up for 2 hours and just bomb and walk everybody in the room. there's like an element of insanity there, and there's quite a few comedians who are up to that task. I never liked that idea. Like I for one, I can't imagine being up for 2 hours doing doing a set to begin with. But then the prospect of walking people out of the room is just something that I'm not attracted to as a comedian. I'd rather kill for 20 minutes and get the hell out of there.
Yeah. So the book, what do you talk about? Since it's not Dice Clay.
Though clearly you could have written a good chapter about him based on this.
It was an opportunity for me to sort of look back on doing comedy for 20 years, and being fortunate to come up doing comedy kind of during like the rise of YouTube, which at one point was kind of like the Wild West when it came to production. Here you had a tool where suddenly you can reach thousands or even millions of people, and it was pretty wild, because I was doing mostly sketch comedy in New York at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater. So on a great night, you'd pack out the place and maybe there's like 100 120 people with standing room and stuff, and then so you'd be doing like these live shows, and then you turn around and put a video out on YouTube, and you're like, whoa, we have like hundreds of thousands of views. So that I think was a really exciting time in comedy, for sure. And then also, coming up at a time where there was, you were, sort of incentivized or given free reign to experiment, to try stuff, and to risk bombing. And I like I said, I don't mention Andrew Dice Clay there, but there is something to like we said before, about a guy who's willing to go up on stage and risk walking people. There's a kind of there's an element there that is dangerous and interesting. So I sort of kind of look back exploring that, and just how comedy seems to have changed a little bit and become a little less forgiving, or at least people audiences a little less forgiving, and we get into like cancel culture and stuff like that.
So where's the best place to get your book?
Yeah.
Always a good question to ask a book guy.
Yeah. So you can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all over the place. Anywhere that you can get books online, it's available.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Yeah, I can finally use that Borders gift card.
Finally.
Now, we always ask for recommendations from our guests for movies that you think people should see. So what is a movie that people should see?
Yeah, so I have two young kids. So I get into sort of a routine of like 5:45 a.m. when my son wakes up and brings me down to the living room, and I have to put on a movie. So for a while, I mean, I would definitely recommend. This is probably not anybody. Everyone's seen Toy Story. I've seen Toy Story going on maybe at like a full year straight, like every morning.
Oh man, I was there, brother, when my kids were that age. That's the movie, man.
Yeah, and it's pretty amazing how it holds up. Like it's a legitimately great movie. But I feel like that's something most people have seen. But one that I was surprised to have liked very much is it's from Disney as well, and it's Turning Red. I think it's a really well made movie. It kind of has like a Teen Wolf feel to it. There's actually a line in the movie that seems to kind of harken back to Teen Wolf. And yeah, it's animated and it's fun, especially if anybody grew up like was in middle school in like the early 2000s. I think they'll really enjoy it. So yeah, we go from it's very different from Ford Fairlane. So.
Well, No, I mean, what if they made Andrew Dice Clay turn into a giant panda?
I'm a panda. Oh.
I'm the president of the WWF. I fucked him.
I'm a young Chinese girl in Toronto.
Yeah, no, that's a great one, and it is one that that has gotten some internet beef too. I know there's a lot of people.
Would Andrew Dice Clay, if he was from Canada, instead of going "oh," would he go "hey"?
I don't know. But yeah, it's a movie that's gotten some heat online, but from some parents for its subject matter. But
oh, really?
Oh, they suck. So
well, it teaches you to hate Asian moms. You know.
I don't know.
Oh, like the Tiger Mom kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that of the appeal it has to you is that it's a period piece, kind of, right? Oh shit! I was a total not. No, but does it not take place in the 2000s with boy bands?
No, it does though. It does. They're obsessed with like a boy band that's very of the era. That's another one having kids. I've also seen a couple of times.
Right,
Four Town,
and the music's
greatest
really good.
boy band ever.
Yeah,
and the main one, it's like I never met somebody like you. And the song is so of that time that I actually was thinking like, wait, was that a song like in the early 2000s? And it turns out it's just Billie Eilish is just such a great songwriter that she was able to create a song that seems like it sort of came out of a wormhole from the early 2000s.
Yeah, right. Like it seems like it's not only from there, but it was a hit from there too.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Like that is a talent.
More believable than Du Jour from Josie and the Pussycats.
On the same level.
Yes. No more.
More. Oh,
I love
Ryan.
Du Jour. I will not be. I will not have Du Jour besmirched.
Hey, Du Jour
Dylan,
means I get to make a recommendation.
You were something. You were a prosecutor. So, what's your recommendation?
I was the rock and roll lawyer.
Dylan, before you go, I kind of feel bad for throwing my client under the bus at the press conference. Normally I commit to a role and I let it go, but I think there was like the dad in me that was just like, I just did something really dirty and bad.
Oh God, what have I done?
Oh God, what have I done? What if this movie is seen again? So
they'll have to work for it. I'll tell you that much.
Oh God, it was hard to find.
We had to dig into our extremely legal archives.
Yeah, very on the up and up. Possibly Canadian.
Extremely on the up and up. Schlenzo, so what's your recommendation?
Okay, well, I love reading IMDb trivia while the movie's on because it makes the show notes a lot easier to prepare. And while reading for this movie, I learned that Priscilla Presley basically only did this movie and the first two Naked Gun movies. And since the first one was recommended, kudos again to Ben Haslar for his Letterboxd list recommendations of justice. Go follow now and give it a little heart. I am forced then to recommend The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear. Leslie Nielsen is back and just as funny as ever as the goofy antics of Police Squad continue to unfold. I would be remiss if I did not point you towards Ryan's show, The Coolness Chronicles, as he did a tremendous deep dive not only into the Naked Gun franchise, but more broadly the work of the Zucker brothers, which even includes Ghost. That's right, the Patrick Swayze movie, that was a Zucker brother. I didn't know that until I listened to Ryan's show. So as soon as this show's over and you hear that bum, 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 you go right to The Coolness Chronicles and give it a listen.
Oh, you're a darling.
I knew you'd be the only one to vote for me.
Do you think it's an improvement on the first?
I do.
No. Do you?
I like it. Well, I wouldn't say that it's a better movie, but I find it funnier than I do the first one.
I have to level with you. Some of the funniest jokes I say like every single day. Like I'm constantly calling someone Enrico Palazzo, so I love the first one a lot. It has been a while since I've seen the second one, so I'll have to watch it again and give it a fair shake.
All right. Great. Nothing quotable in any of that. Big Ben.
Leslie Nielsen is back and just as funny as ever. There you go.
I'm not going to use that. Big Ben, what is your recommendation?
Today's film was about the rock and roll detective, and my recommendation is about a detective on a rock who might be being trolled. It's the worst connection of the dots I've ever done, but I'm still going with it. It's Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island. This film
there's no connection there at all.
No, there's not. It's a film people are very aware of, but sadly I rarely heard discussed, which doesn't make sense because I think among Marty's work, he really scored with this one. It's Leonardo DiCaprio playing a detective who arrives on an island used as an asylum for the criminally insane and run by exactly who you'd expect, Ben Kingsley. Soon, he becomes to doubt his own sanity, though, as Kingsley provides him with aspirin that might have a few side effects not mentioned on the bottle. And what follows is a mind-bender of a journey trying to separate fantasies derived from personal trauma and what might actually be real. You won't find it on Shudder, but you can rent Shutter Island for $3 practically anywhere.
Support your local library.
No,
Support your local library.
I do think it's a great one. It's just not what I think of when I think of Scorsese. I just think it's a great movie, and I always block him as the director out of my head. It just doesn't really feel.
Speaking of blocked heads, Maynard, you were the foreman. Why don't you give us your recommendation?
A very strange segue there. You know, the 90s was a strange time when Hollywood thought every comedian with a little buzz deserved to star in his own detective movie, and my recommendation is no exception. Clean Slate, starring Dana Carvey. A private investigator suffers from a rare form of amnesia in which his short-term memory is wiped every single night. He has to document his findings on a tape recorder to refresh himself each morning as he tries to unravel a tangled web of murder. Sound familiar? Well, this movie was released 6 years before Memento.
Sorry.
Did Christopher Nolan see this movie? We'll never know because he's dead. But all jokes aside, the one thing this movie definitely has going for it over Memento is it's somewhat funnier. Clean Slate is currently streaming nowhere, but I do believe there was a Blu-ray release a few years back, so please support Dana Carvey. He's one of the good ones.
Yeah, that is a funny movie.
It is a funny movie.
Really
I think it's another one that's just fallen through the cracks. You can't find it very easily. It's 94.
We'll have to do it on the show. Who's game?
Who you can't prosecute perfection. Ryan, what is your recommendation? Send us on home.
I had some difficulty deciding what to recommend this week. I considered The Adventures of Remo Williams, but somebody beat me to it. So instead, I'll recommend another film from 1990, a much better film than Ford Fairlane, Sam Raimi's Darkman. Simultaneously an homage to Universal monster movies of the 30s and 40s and the Golden Age Batman villain Clayface. This is arguably Raimi's first comic book movie, even if it is an entirely original production. The visual style that emerged through Evil Dead is all there, amped up by pulp aesthetics and an influence from paneled graphic art. Darkman is currently for rent on Amazon, but you should pick up the outstanding Shout Factory Blu-ray instead.
Yeah, I gotta see Darkman. I haven't seen Darkman in I think I've seen it once, but I haven't seen it.
That's Liam Neeson, right?
Yes, just watched it 2 weeks ago. Yeah. It's amazing. It's the best.
Now, how many are there, though? There's like three or four?
There's three of them.
Okay.
I got to see all of them then. Oh, well, I got to.
No, you don't. No, trust me.
I have my weekend planned. But with that, we are all at a show. But we want to thank our guest, Lou Perez, for joining us. Thank you so much, Lou.
Guys, I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Go buy Lou's book.
But we're going to have you back again, and we're going to force you back into the cinematic law. I know you said you're done, but you're not done, man.
What's the worst film that you can get off? Let's see.
Pull you back in.
God.
And when that happens, we hope everyone else will join us again as well, as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
I got nothing.
Oh!
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.